Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Get ready for another incredible story. Come on, please. Vanessa tapped the name tag on my hand with a sly smile. You've always been more of a housekeeper than family. As I gazed at the tag, laughter echoed around the hall. Housekeeper Lily Parker. My existence was obliterated and my seat was empty of plates. Satisfied, Carol sipped her wine. Vanessa smiled, anticipating my silent embarrassment. They believed they had triumphed. They were unaware of what was about to happen. I'm Lily Parker, and I just went through the most embarrassing experience of my life at the age of 35. Carol, my constantly critical mother-in-law, and Vanessa, my resentful sister-in-law, believed they could shatter me. Assuming I would wear that silly name tag that identified me as their maid rather than Robert's wife, they expected me to sit there feeling ashamed and swallowing their insults. I wasn't crying, though, as they grinned and reveled in their small victory, believing they had made me into nothing. They were unaware that I had already started the process because I had anticipated this. It would not be me leaving in shame when this night was ended. The weight of the moment pressed against my flesh as I allowed the cheap plastic to eat away at my palm. The tag's words, a purposeful insult masquerading as an error, burned themselves into my memory. Housekeeper. Not Robert Wilson's wife, Lily Parker. Not relatives, only a servant. The air around me was filled with the sound of clinking glasses and whispering. All the eyes in the great ballroom darted from me to that tag, some wide with sympathy, some with hardly disguised laughter. This was happening and no one was preventing it. No one was standing up for me. My eyes strayed to my spouse, Robert. He was standing on the other side of the room, talking to Michael, the groom, and he had no idea what was happening a few feet away. He didn't just accept my humiliation, he didn't see it. This is what I should have anticipated. No, this is what I expected. Carol made it obvious that I didn't fit in this family from the day I got married. I was never really accepted, but she put up with me because Robert insisted. A middle-class nurse wasn't deserving of the Wilson moniker. And Vanessa. She hated me just for being me, because I had diverted her beloved brother's focus from her, because her wealth, status, and immaculately planned life didn't impress me. Years of icy looks, backhanded praise, and insults whispered at family get-togethers had been ingested by me. In my own marriage, I had suffered as the outsider, scrutinized by Carol and treated cruelly by Vanessa. However, their masterwork was this, the last act of deterioration. They also anticipated that I would sit there feeling ashamed, quiet. Carol raised her wine glass and swirled the rich red liquid while amusedly observing me from the other side of the room.
Oh my, try not to take it personally. It's only a small joke, I grinned. Since they were unaware of my knowledge, they were unaware that I had been getting ready for this for the last 6 months. That while Vanessa was enjoying her role
as the pampered princess and Carol was busy ruling her social circle, I was secretly gathering all the proof I needed to destroy their world. They were unaware that I had already spoken with a financial investigator and had exposed all of Carol's dubious transactions with Robert's accounts. They were unaware that I possessed evidence of Vanessa's brief affair, which she believed she had successfully concealed. They were unaware that they would no longer be able to look down on me after tonight. They believed they were observing my fall. They were observing my ascent. Suddenly, the weight of the name tag in my hand seemed inconsequential. I raised my eyes and met Vanessa's with a spooky serenity that caused her grin to waver. The name tag was fastened to my dress. Vanessa blinked. "Hold on. What are you? I brought a champagne flute to my lips with purposeful ease after reaching for it from a waiter's tray as he passed. I then looked at Carol. "You're right," I responded in a nice, even voice. "Perhaps I ought to play the part." I took a slow sip and silently tipped my glass toward her. Carol's mouth opened a little, as though she had just realized the game. She believed she was winning. Vanessa moved next to her mum, her gaze flitting between Carol and me. "Lily, if you're attempting—" I put down my glass while maintaining a constant smile. "Oh, Vanessa, don't worry." I lowered my voice just enough for her to hear, leaning in a little. The punchline is the best part of a joke, and I had only just begun. As I swirled the champagne in my glass, I observed the golden liquid glistening in the light from the chandelier. Vanessa continued to stare at me, waiting for a response, a shiver in my voice, a break in my poise, anything that would prove she had won. However, I refused to give her that. Never, ever. Because I had already set the stage for my own conclusion, even if she believed this small stunt was her climax. This was something I had anticipated when Vanessa got engaged. I was aware that this wedding was about more than simply her. It had to do with power. About Carol solidifying her position in society, about Vanessa demonstrating once more that she was the princess who earned it all and the golden child, and I was fully aware of where it had put me. Outdoors, I knew exactly where I belonged in this household. Carol made it plain that I was tolerated, not accepted, as soon as I married Robert. I tried at first. I tried, God. I pretended to be the obedient daughter-in-law, ignored the passive-aggressive remarks, and allowed Carol and Vanessa to bully me because I believed that if I waited long enough they would change. They didn't, so I did. I gave up on their game. I gave up pleading for approval that I would never receive. And I began to listen. Because of folks like Vanessa and Carol, their hand was constantly overplayed. I began prepping half a year ago. First, the money. Robert had always been viewed by Carol as an extension of her fortune. His success was hers to show off, and his money was hers. However, she had become reckless. We each made contributions to the joint account that Robert and I maintained. Additionally, I observed strange withdrawals for months, thousands of dollars vanishing into accounts I didn't know. Robert dismissed it when I brought it up to him. His words were, "Mum just needs a little extra for the wedding planning," as he rubbed the back of his neck. "It's temporary. It never lasted." I so began withdrawing my own funds while Robert was distracted. I made sure I wouldn't be left without anything in the event that this marriage failed by opening another account and discreetly rerouting my direct deposits. I then looked further. Carol was stealing Robert's money, not just using it. The results of the financial investigation I hired were worse than I had anticipated. Under Robert's identity, Carol had taken out debts. She was embezzling money while barely hiding her activities from Robert. However, I did. I also saved all of the receipts. Then there was Vanessa. She had a way of distorting reality and making herself seem like the victim and the one in need of pity, so I had always known she was a liar. However, her engagement to Michael, that was not the same. Since Vanessa wasn't merely lying, she was unfaithful. A few months ago, I happened to find out. While taking a shower, Robert had left his phone on the counter. I looked at the screen as it buzzed, anticipating a text from work. Rather, I saw Vanessa's message. "Tell him that last night I was with you. Michael is becoming suspicious. I initially believed her to be kidding." The hotel receipt was then discovered in the trash. She hadn't even made an effort to conceal it. I got to work digging the following day. examined her Venmo history, tag locations, and social media accounts. I located a man named Jason, younger than Michael. She had been seeing the same personal trainer for about a year. I took screenshots of everything. I waited after that, the last component, the actual wedding. I was aware that Vanessa and Carol would attempt to make me look bad. They were powerless to stop themselves. I therefore requested a favor a week prior to the wedding. Eleanor, Michael's mother, and I met.
Had never been close to Eleanor, but we had always been courteous.
Nevertheless, I was aware that she respected honesty. So I pushed a well-organized file across the table, sat across from her in a quiet cafe, and watched as her look changed from one of courteous curiosity to one of icy rage. I said, "I thought you should know who your son is marrying," while I sipped my coffee slowly. Eleanor turned the pages, looking at the Venmo transactions, the hotel receipts, and Vanessa's texts. Her fingers clenched around the page when she got to the financial report on Carol. Her voice was deadly calm as she whispered, "She's been stealing from Robert." For years, I attested to. Eleanor let out a deep breath and looked at me. "What do you want from me, Lily?" I grinned. Simply, "Nothing," I replied. "Just watch what happens tonight." Eleanor gave me a single nod, and I realized that the wedding was already done. Therefore, I felt nothing but satisfaction as I sat in this magnificent ballroom with a housekeeper name tag attached to my outfit, surrounded by people who believed they were watching me fail, since they were unaware of what was going to strike them. Unaware, Carol gulped her wine. Now that I hadn't responded the way she had hoped, Vanessa had resumed her gloating and confidence. They were unaware that Michael would be presented with a carefully wrapped gift with evidence of Vanessa's treachery in his hotel suite in a matter of hours. During the wedding toast, the financial skeletons of the Wilson family would be exposed. Eleanor would ensure that Carol's debts were disclosed to the appropriate parties. I had allowed them to ignore me for years, but this evening they were going to have to face the consequences tonight. I lifted my champagne flute a little and reached for it. I whispered just loud enough for Vanessa to hear. "To family." Thinking I meant it, she grinned. I knew I didn't, so I grinned back as if she were a queen presiding over her court. Vanessa swirled her champagne. Carol was so proud of herself that she leaned back in her chair and tapped her fingernails against the crystal stem of her wine glass. I simply sat there, observing, waiting, giving them the impression that they had won for a brief moment. Vanessa tipped her head in a dramatic sigh.
"I really don't understand why you look so stiff, Lily." She waved at the opulent ballroom, pointing to the tall flower displays and the live string quartet in the backdrop. "You ought to feel thankful. Look where you are, despite the syrupy
Sweetness of her tone, I understood her true meaning. Check out where I left you, as if she'd done me a huge favor by letting me go to her wedding at all. Carol shook her head and laughed quietly. "Don't make fun of her, Vanessa. She's most likely simply overburdened." She gestured lazily at the luxury all around us. "After all, she isn't exactly accustomed to this, is she?" Nails pressed into my hand as my fingers curled beneath the table. With them, it was always the game. Sharp, small daggers kept slipping between the ribs, one after the other, yet the digs were never obvious or loud enough for anyone to hear. "However," Vanessa went on, swirling her glass of champagne, "I must admit that I was taken aback when you finally arrived. Given Robert's hectic schedule, I assumed you would be, was the term preoccupied used? Something hot and sharp was slicing through me as the smile pulled at Vanessa's lips. Distracted. I understood her meaning perfectly. Carol took another drink of wine and hummed. Robert has been working at the firm for a very long time. Weekend meetings and late nights. I guess that kind of schedule could be taxing on a marriage. The words were carefully weighted and positioned. They weren't merely sowing doubtful seeds. I was supposed to think that something had already taken root. I breathed softly in amusement. I leaned forward a little and added, "You're right. Robert has been putting in a lot of work. However, that is the result of being the only qualified individual in a firm full of individuals who are taking advantage of your accomplishment." Carol's wineglass hesitated. I grinned. But that must be wearing him out, always cleaning up other people's messes, fixing things before they fall apart, and covering for other people's mistakes. I cocked my head slightly to allow the meaning to sink in. Carol's mouth formed a thin line. Vanessa made a fictitious gasp, still not realizing the change in tone. "Whoa, are we defensive?" Slowly and deliberately I let my smile to grow. "Not at all." I imitated her previous motion by swirling my champagne. People projecting their own insecurities onto others just makes me laugh. I raised my eyes and met hers. It's almost like they have something to conceal. For a moment, just a moment, Vanessa's smile wavered. She flipped her hair over her shoulder and scoffed. "Oh, Lily, please, do you honestly believe that I would be wasting my time keeping anything from you?" "No," I thought. "You simply thought I wouldn't be intelligent enough to notice," Carol groaned, pretending to be tired. Okay, enough of this back and forth. We're here to commemorate the special day of Vanessa and Michael. I don't know what this is." I paid close attention to her, picking up on the faint edge in her voice. Unless she sensed a loss of control, Carol never stepped in. Fascinating. Vanessa sighed. "All right, however, I must confess that I am a little interested, Lily." She held her chin up in her hand. "What do you do?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you do?" "Remain wed to Robert." There was
false earnestness in her voice. "Don't get me wrong, he's a wonderful brother."
"However, as a husband?" God, what a bore he is. Carol stiffened. "Vanessa?" "What?" Vanessa shrugged emphatically. "I'm merely expressing what we've all considered at one time or another. He never shows any personality outside of work, works non-stop, and hardly ever—" "Vanessa?" Carol's warning was obvious as she cut in abruptly this time. I remained silent. I simply raised my glass and sipped slowly. Because I have it now, it has nothing to do with me. I had never been the focus. Vanessa's animosity for me went beyond simple jealousy. It wasn't a competition between siblings. It went farther than that. She detested Robert's choice of me, that I have his love and dedication which she was never able to have. Perhaps she had always secretly believed she could destroy us. The idea that she could gradually erode me till I broke, and this was meant to be her masterpiece, out here, in front of everyone at her wedding tonight. I was meant to fall apart. I didn't. I put my glass down with a soft clink and grinned. "You're right, Vanessa," I answered breezily. "Robert puts in a lot of work. However, are you aware of the distinction between me and you?" Her forehead raised. "Oh, do tell." Leaning forward, I spoke in a calm, controlled tone. "I don't need
to lie or manipulate people to feel like I'm winning." Her eyes twitched with amusement. "And I sure as hell don't need to fake an entire life just to keep a man around."
Gentle, yet deadly. Vanessa's fingers clenched around the stem of her glass as her face contorted. "Excuse me?" I cocked my head. "Something wrong?" She appeared shaken for the first time during the evening. Carol touched Vanessa's arm after noticing the change.
"Enough," she murmured softly. Let's not ruin the night over. Vanessa, however, wasn't paying attention. Her gaze was fixed on mine as a gradual awareness set in, because she understood, then and there, something I knew. I simply grinned, because
It wasn't me who was about to lose control. She was. She stopped grinning. Her knuckles were white as her fingers tightened around the stem of her champagne flute. She was unaware of what I possessed.
not quite yet. However, she sensed it. The change in authority. The initial crack was hardly audible. There was a faint whisper that travelled throughout the ballroom like an unseen ripple. I saw it without even turning. I sensed it. People's quiet, but
Intense whispers and their subtle leaning toward each other. Something was going on. I slowly reached for my glass while feigning indifference. Acting like you didn't hear. Did you hear? A voice from behind me. God, her own wedding. Another gasp, barely suppressed. Poor Michael. My mouth twisted around my glass's edge. I sipped slowly. Correct. On time. Vanessa's head jerked up, and she looked around the room. At the changing faces, the snatched looks. Panic. There it was. Her eyes flickered. Then, seemingly at the same moment, a waiter came to Michael's table. He leaned over and spoke softly into Michael's ear. Michael put down his drink and scowled, and I knew as soon as his eyes shifted to Vanessa. It was done. There was more than just confusion on his face. It was chilly, detached, as if a man had realized his error. But it was too late. Vanessa sprang out of her chair and almost toppled it. She said, "Michael," in a strained, high-pitched voice. "What's wrong?" Michael remained silent. Rather, he extracted a little, nicely wrapped packet from his tuxedo's breast pocket. I recognized it right away. 1 hour prior to the ceremony, I had brought it to his hotel suite. I folded my hands carefully in my lap and put down my champagne flute. I also observed Michael extracted a stack of pictures by sliding his fingers under the flap. Vanessa froze. I witnessed it. It dawned on me at that precise time, the moment she realized what was in his hands. Images, screenshots, receipts from hotels, her burner phone messages. Everything. All the secrets she believed she had buried were unearthed. Michael's face was unreadable as he flipped through the pictures. There was silence throughout the ballroom. Each breath was held. Every murmur was silenced. Vanessa stepped forward unsteadily. "Michael, He lifted a hand, slow, intentional. Then she halted. The chamber was splintered by the second crack. Elena, Michael's mother, stood up. A single sound pierced the silence. When her chair brushed the floor, Carol tensed up next to me, since she was aware. She simply had no idea how much. Still, Elena pivoted, not to Vanessa, to Carol. Her silence weighed more than any charge, and her eyes were piercing. There was no whisper. In the third crack, it wasn't a gasp or a whisper, it was a proclamation. Elena let out a breath, slow, managed. The focus then shifted to the wedding attendees. "I'd like to make an announcement." Carol's face lost its color. Vanessa shifted closer to Michael after a swallowing clearly, as if she could save this somehow. She was unable to. Elena took the envelope from Michael's grasp and held it up for everyone in the room to see. She virtually spat out the phrase, "It appears that my son's fiancée has been lying to him, and to all of us." An oppressive quiet. Vanessa's laughter was stifled. I don't know what." Elena glanced in her direction. After that, Vanessa's words abruptly stopped speaking. "Did you think this wouldn't come out?" Elena spoke softly. "Risky. That you could humiliate my family, my son, and walk away unscathed? There would be rumors. Deals would fall through. Carol's meticulously constructed image? In ruins, I had allowed them to ignore me for years. They would have nothing when they left this ballroom tonight. And me? I would leave without a fight. I saw everything fall apart from the edge of the ballroom. Vanessa, still motionless, still clinging to what little of her meticulously constructed existence she still has. Michael, gazing upon her as if she were merely a discoloration on his shoe bottom. The hotel manager whispered another harsh truth into Carol's ear, causing her to flush crimson with rage and feel desperate. Once invincible, the Wilson family was in disarray, and me! At last, I was free. Carol looked across at me, her eyes blazed, raw, roiling hate, since she was aware. This wasn't a coincidence. She knew that Vanessa's public humiliation, her financial collapse, and the total destruction of their family's social position hadn't all happened overnight. Every single moment had been planned by me. I performed the one thing she was unable to do as I turned and slipped past the collapsing mayhem. I grinned. She stepped quickly in my direction. Elena was quicker, though. "I wouldn't," she stated in a calm, ice-coated voice. Carol stopped, crinkled fists, grinding of the teeth. She was powerless here for the first time in her life. With a high-pitched voice, Vanessa turned to Michael. "Please, Michael, you cherish
Me? You claim to adore me. You cannot simply leave this situation." All Michael did was look at her. Not impressed at all. Tossing his head, he thought, "You know what's funny?"
Vanessa winced. "I actually feel sorry for you." Not enough to be a fool, though. His face grew stern. "We're done." And with that, he turned to leave. With a gasp, Vanessa staggered back, her hands shaking. She spun about frantically, looking for someone, anybody, to come to her aid. Nobody did. The Golden Princess was no longer her. She was a warning story. The manager of the hotel cleared his throat. "Mrs. Wilson," he began cautiously, his professionalism scarcely disguised. "Since your account is unfortunately in arrears, we'll need to discuss alternative payment options." Carol's head jerked in his direction. Burning rage. "You think I can't
"Pay for this?" she spit out. "Do you have any idea who I am?"
The manager gave a courteous smile, not bothered. "Yes, ma'am." "Yes, I do." To argue, Carol opened her mouth. I took a step forward, touched the table with a hand. Everyone in the room turned to face me. "I'll cover the bill," I said amicably. "But just for the employees. They did a fantastic job tonight," I gave a shrug. "The others? It's not my issue." Carol's gaze widened. Every aspect is overtaken by rage. "You bitch!" Elena gave a tongue click. "Careful, Carol." Carol spun around on her. Elena, meanwhile, only arched a dissatisfied eyebrow. I was victorious. They were all aware of it. I chose not to stay for the fallout. I wasn't interested in seeing Robert, Vanessa, or Carol panic. Robert is so naive and poor, recognizing that his whole universe had just caught fire. I had fulfilled my destiny. I turned and left after that. I entered the refreshing night air, inhaled it, let my lungs fill with it. I need to clear my head. Then wait. "Lily!" That voice seemed familiar to me. I turned, after rolling my shoulders and letting out a sigh. Robert. He appeared to be in ruins. He untied his tie.
Untidy hair, pale face. What the hell just happened in there? I cocked my head. "Oh, did you fail to notice?" "Don't do that," he curtly said. His voice cracked. I recently discovered that my mother has been embezzling money from me. Vanessa has.
Been unfaithful, that everything I believed to be true was a blatant falsehood. He bobbed his throat, his eyes begging. You knew, didn't you? I grinned. Slow, intentional. Of course I knew. Robert winced. His whole body stiffened. Then why didn't you tell me? I let the silence to linger, tasting it, enjoying it. Then I said something. Because you wouldn't have believed me. Robert started to speak, then paused, since he was aware of my correctness. Carol had always put me down. Vanessa had insulted me each time. I'd attempted to get him to see each time. He had disregarded it. He had allowed it to occur. You were comfortable with the way things were, I added. Be calm. It was easier for you to pretend your mother wasn't a manipulative leech. It's easier to assume that Vanessa was simply misinterpreted. It was simpler to believe that I was the issue. Robert took a deep breath. You let them treat me like an outsider, I said. You saw them degrade me for years, make fun of me, don't
Include me, and you did nothing. He winced. Excellent. I inhaled deeply and slowly. I'll be solid with my next words. Robert, you were liked. I did, in fact. His eyes are lustrous. Lily. But love isn't supposed to feel like begging to be seen. Quiet. A heavy, thick quiet. I looked him in the eye. Allow the gravity of the situation to sink in, then at last, I deserve better. And finally, I turned to leave. My skin felt
warm in the ocean breeze. With coffee in hand, I sat on my new apartment's balcony and watched the waves come in. Now, life was different. Better. Once I was away from Robert, I rested. A new position. One who appreciated me. Unlike the prior one, that didn't exhaust me. A new house, my house, I was doing well. What about the Wilsons? Carol lost everything. She was unable to keep up without Robert's financial support. The mansion had vanished. The status was destroyed. Her name no longer carried the same weight it once did, but she was still fighting her. Way back up, Vanessa? Michael didn't turn around. Both the wedding and her idyllic little fantasy were dead. In their sphere, she became a persona non grata, and as of the last time I heard, she was having trouble finding her next ideal mate, Robert.
2? I'm not sure. I don't give a damn, because I am free for the first time in years. As I put down my coffee, I observed the waves crashing against the coast. I then leaned back in my chair and let out a long, contented sigh and grinned. If you liked
the video, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon.